Hi, I'm Penn, and this is my partner, Teller. We are Penn and Teller, and this is a program about the art of photography. I mean, you've all seen photographs in magazines and newspapers and even in museums. So what's the big deal? Well, photographers, just like other artists, try and show you something that they think is special or important about the world. And they do this by putting a frame around what they want you to see. They have to decide what they're going to put into their pictures and what they're going to leave out. For example, the frame of this picture of us is the edge of your TV screen. The TV camera operator has thought about this frame and carefully chosen exactly what to put inside it and what to leave out.
What's in? What's out? You look at the big picture, you think you've seen it all. Could be you'd see it differently when focused in on small. One becomes a doctor, one's loss, another's find. A goofy kid becomes a star. A close-up aims your mind. A dog may simply be a dog, depends on how you see a dog. What's in, what's out, determines what it's all about. Sometimes what shows is just eyes and noses. The frame is the name of the game. Look at another picture and let that camera zoom. Frame in on small groups so you'll see what fits right in with whom. Ice cream's meant for sharing, and friends for sharing too. The close-ups on relationships. What kind of dog are you? Musicians try to make you hear. The camera makes musicians clear. What's in, what's out, determines what it's all about. Not coincidental, it's all instrumental. The frame is the name of the game. You look at any picture, you get just what you see. But leave a part outside the frame, you change reality. Is that a real doctor? Is he really on the ball? That girl who's looking so relaxed, well, that's not true at all. The lens defines the art of dance by looking at some part of dance. What's in, what's out, determines what it's all about. Pictures proclaim the photographer's aim. The frame is the name of the game.
Now we're going to talk about the art of photography. Teller is running the camera, and he has taken the edge of the picture and put it here and here. That's called the frame. And framing is very important because what's inside the frame is in the picture, and what's outside the frame isn't. This is true for painting, drawing, and photographs. We think of photographs as being somehow more real than, say, paintings or drawings, but photographers, like all artists, have to choose what particular piece of the world they want you to see. Even if a photographer were to show you a big, wide picture, they still, that's good. Excuse me. Even if a photographer were to show you a picture of the whole big studio, they would still not be showing you the whole world. They would be choosing the part of it they want you to look at. Now, a good photographer would be framing me now, because the camera person would notice that I'm the one talking, and therefore I should be the center of attention in this particular picture. When photographers compose their photographs, they're making choices, pointing out to you what interests them about the subjects. Teller, those aren't your potato chips. In this show, we'll talk about what photographers might be thinking when they make these choices in their framing. Carrie Mae Weems is a photographer whose photographs have hung in museums and been printed in books and in magazines. She's interested in framing things, often ordinary things, in ways that make you think about them differently. So the most important thing to know is that to photographers, what's in the frame is what's the most important.
Come this way and look this way and look through my frame, right? You can look through my frame. What am I framing?
Today, Carrie Mae Weems is going to show these kids how to look at the world in a new way.
To point it down, maybe I don't want to see all of that I'm seeing right through my frame. You can use your frames in the same way. Isolate out for yourself what rests inside your frame and what exists outside of it. So let's start off down here. Let's go down here. That's a wonderful group of trees. Maybe it might be sort of interesting if we just kind of all photographed around this area, using your frame to kind of map out for yourself how that final photograph is going to be framed. You know, or maybe I might again want to shift around just a little bit more, holding my frame up still, right? And getting something else, and sort of remaining on this. The only thing that's important in some ways, does the photograph in the end represent what you saw in your mind? I mean, you know, like for instance, if you were standing behind Mignon, and you're all photographing basically in this direction, right? Almost from the same vantage point, we'd have 4 different, completely different photographs.
I saw a house with a tree that got some of the buildings. The whole building.
Yeah. I love this beach. Are there any big differences or major differences between what you see in the photograph on the right and the one you see on the left? Even though we basically took them from the same position. Huh? What are some of the differences?
She got the whole building. She was closer to there. And I was like down there, kind of.
Well, one of the things that's interesting is because you're shorter.
She's taller.
She did get a little bit
right?
more. She got a lot more grass.
Exactly, exactly. There's more in your foreground, which is very funny. Because how many of us think about our own height as determining what a photograph is going to look like in the end? How do you hold the camera? How do you position the camera so that something else starts to happen that you want to have happen, right? You can decide that, okay, this is where I'm located, I can decide that I'm going to tilt it up slightly, just a little bit more towards the sky, just a little bit more up off the ground so that there's not so much in the foreground, or actually going just the other way. Maybe what's in the foreground is even more important than what's in the background. This is a wonderful slide, isn't it? It's a terrific slide. What happens when you photograph, let's say if I decided to photograph it from here, what happens when I photograph it from this angle, and what happens when I walk up on it, right, and I get just a little closer, right? What happens when I start to isolate something out about it, a detail or something like that, huh? Okay? Now, the angle of view is completely up to you, and the distance is completely up to you, except that you have to make 2 photographs from 2 different distances, one closer and one further away. It's about taking your time, and circling around the thing that you are interested in photographing, and then deciding that that's where you want to take the picture from. You don't have to rush. In other words, you have all the time in the world. This is great, huh? It becomes like a completely abstract photograph because it's so close. A completely different photograph than this, huh? Completely different. This one makes you feel like there's a really long slide, you know?
It's funny how they all were at the top.
Isn't it? When you all photograph from the same vantage point, but it's still very different, right? The photographs are not only different in terms of slight variations, right? In this case, there's slight variations, but all of them have a very different mood to them, don't they? What kind of mood does this photograph have?
Eerie.
Isn't it? It's eerie. There's something about it that just sort of makes me really tense and right in my stomach. It's very scary. Well, you said that you were interested in that kind of stuff.
This one kind of like makes me feel like I'm on a roller coaster.
Yeah. But you know, the funny thing about this is that we're on a children's playground, and yet each of you sort of photograph this like it's the fastest roller coaster ride in history or something, right? It's spinning, it's frightening, it's eerie, right? But you've taken something that's very, very simple, that's very, very ordinary, and made a completely different meaning out of it. 1,000 kids go up and down that slide all day long and are never afraid to do it. And all of a sudden you provide us with a photograph that makes us think about it one more time. You guys make great pictures.
Okay. Oh.
What's the problem, Aldo?
I'm trying to take a picture of my food, one that tells the world how I feel about it. It's just not working.
Move the camera closer.
That's a good idea, Eddie. Oh, it's still no good. It doesn't tell the whole food story. It looks too much like a commercial, Eddie. It doesn't tell the world what I think about my food. What am I going to do?
I have an idea, Aldo.
It's perfect, Eddie.
It does show everyone exactly how you feel about your dog food. The perfect relationship.
We thought we'd let you in on some of the tricks that photographers use to make you see things in new ways and also make you think. The first thing photographers think about is subject matter. What are they going to take a picture of? And once they decide on the subject matter, they have to pick the focal point. Focal point actually means the thing that you focus on. It's the thing the photographer wants to emphasize. Photographers have a few secrets about how to make you notice the focal point in their pictures, which is where they want you to look. They play around with a lot of the same things that painters and sculptors do. Size, for instance. If you want to emphasize something, one way to do it is to make it very big in the frame. When the subject's focal point takes up most of the frame, it becomes very important.
You can tell a lot about these people from their feet, but you can't really tell their personality from their feet.
She looks kind of scared, like she's watching out for something.
This reminds me of when a gust of wind comes and somebody's wearing one of those skirts.
I would say it looked like very long hair.
Now, you'd think that a photographer would know enough to put the focal point or the most important part of the picture in the middle, right? I mean, we all do that. Well, sometimes photographers don't. It's one of the tricks they use to get you to think about the things that they want you to think about. Instead of putting the most important thing, the focal point, in the middle of the frame, they sometimes put it close to one of the edges. This makes you think not only about the focal point, but also about what's in the rest of the frame, and also what the rest of the picture and the focal point have to do with one another.
Maybe he just built that building and he's admiring it.
This guy's got a really long way to go.
The photographer wanted to take a picture of the painter, but also wanted to see what the painter was painting. Maybe they think that it's funny that maybe the photographer just caught them writing on the wall.
Now, sometimes photographers will emphasize what they want you to think about by not putting it in their picture, or by putting only a piece of it in their picture.
You can't see his face, so you have to guess what he's feeling.
I think that the coach is pointing somewhere. Number 28 is confused.
Is number 28 getting fired?
Another thing that photographers often do to get you to see things the way that they do is to use their frame to make you think about relationships. They want you to think about the relationship or connection between two or more people or things within the frame.
Those girls are going to school, and the ducks look like they're all going to school too. The lady isn't very interested in what her husband is taking a picture of. I think the bird is wondering what the pipe is.
Today, Carrie Mae Weems is photographing a folk artist's front yard.
I just love this place. Love this place. Part of what makes a successful photograph or image is how well you're able to see. Taking your time to look and to see what's there, and then deciding where you want to be relative to the object that you're photographing. If you can just make some of those sort of very simple decisions, you'll probably walk away with much more successful photographs. I like photographing things straight on. Trying to let the subject then speak for itself. Isn't this just an amazing piece? I mean, probably the most difficult thing for me in being in this place is really trying to figure out how to frame it, how to make it work, because there's so much and it's so tight. It's this sort of wonderful, wonderful world that's being created. All these sort of decisions that you have to make, like, what do you want to look at? What are you really looking at? What do you really want to describe about a thing, about a person. That's the hard part. How close do you want to be to it? How far away do you want to be from it? That also helps you decide what it is that you're looking at. You can look at things in so many different ways, so many different perspectives. Probably the most difficult part about photography is attempting to clarify that out of everything that you see, how do you give the picture an organization that wasn't necessarily there before? These are contact sheets. It gives me a record of everything that I photographed. And what I'm doing is looking over the contact sheet and trying to decide which photograph works best, and therefore which photograph I might want to print once I get into the darkroom. It's a way of narrowing down the selection process. So that again, you start looking and noticing your framing. I mean, there's a problem in here. So I'd probably want to get rid of some of that over there, and I might want to get rid of some of this over here so that I can concentrate just a little bit more in here on that image. There's a negative that's been placed into the enlarger, and we are cropping on the enlarger. As I cropped, actually, I'm trying to mirror the cropping that I did on the contact sheet. So I'll move the blades up slightly and get rid of some of that foreground. After you expose the negative onto light-sensitive paper, you place it in a chemical called the developer. Once the photographic paper goes into the developer, you rock it slightly, gently, and slowly but surely an image begins to emerge. Once it's developed, it takes about a minute and a half or so. You take it and you put it in the stop bath, and that stops the action, the development action. And then from there, you take it and you put it in the fixer. The fixer makes the image permanent so that you can then take the photograph out into the light and you can look at it. And then after you've done all that, you've got to wash it, and you've got to hang the photograph up to dry. The fact is that every single photograph, no matter who takes it, no matter when they take it, it's all about expressing an attitude, expressing an emotion, expressing an idea. And as a result of that, also expressing meaning, right? That it means something. That we're not looking at the real thing, that we're looking at representations of things, and we're looking at representations based on how we see the world and how we want to express it. Right. So you have to decide where you stand too. What kind of person are you? What are you trying to get across? What are you trying to convey? For instance, this photograph of my mom. I wanted to make it like a portrait of her at work. What I'm trying to do is to impart a certain amount of information and a certain kind of experience to the viewer.
So photographers, like painters, look at the world, choose bits of it to show you, and stick them in a frame in ways that can surprise you, reassure you, or give you a jolt. Keep on thinking.
A very well-framed composition, don't you think?